Bart Richards felt the warm Korean sun on his face. He stood outside the train station in Changwon, a city he now called home. His luggage was beside him, filled with books and dreams. He had come from a small town in America to teach English at a university. Everything felt new and exciting. The signs were in a language he was just beginning to learn, and the air smelled of delicious street food and green trees. Bart was not a young man, but his heart was full of a young man's hope. He believed in new starts and the goodness of people. He looked at the map on his phone, found the address of his new apartment, and smiled. This was the beginning of a wonderful adventure. He pulled his heavy suitcase along the clean pavement. People walked by, busy with their day. Some glanced at him, a foreigner with a big smile, and smiled back. Bart felt a connection already. He had read many books about Korea before he came. He knew about its rich history, its polite culture, and its beautiful landscapes. Changwon was known for its parks and its well-planned streets. It was not as big as Seoul, and that was why he chose it. He wanted a community, a place where he could know his neighbors and become part of the city's life. He was not just here to teach. He was here to live, to learn, and to make friends. His new apartment was on the third floor of a modest building. It was small, but the window had a lovely view of a quiet street with cherry blossom trees. He unpacked his things slowly, placing his favorite books on the shelf. He put a photo of his family from back home on a small table. Even though he was far away, he did not feel lonely. He felt a sense of purpose. Tomorrow, he would go to the university. He would meet his new colleagues and his students. He imagined their faces, eager to learn. He hoped he could be a good teacher, someone who inspired them not just to speak English, but to be curious about the world. That evening, he went for a walk to explore his new neighborhood. He found a small restaurant run by an old couple. He pointed at a picture on the menu, and soon a hot, comforting bowl of soup was placed in front of him. The couple watched him with kind eyes as he ate. He tried to say thank you in Korean, 감사합니다. They laughed gently and corrected his pronunciation. Bart laughed with them. It was a simple moment, but it meant so much. It was a welcome. As he walked back to his apartment under the soft glow of the streetlights, he felt sure that he had made the right choice. Changwon was a good place. It was a place for him. Bart Richards had a special gift. It was the gift of making people feel seen and important. At the university, he was not just a teacher. He was a mentor and a friend. He remembered every student's name. He asked them about their families and their dreams. His classes were always full of laughter and encouragement. He told stories from his life in America, and he listened with great interest to their stories about Korea. The students loved him for his kindness. They would often wait after class just to talk with him for a few more minutes. He made learning feel less like a task and more like a conversation between friends. His office door was always open. His warmth extended beyond the university walls. He joined a local hiking club that met every Saturday. The group was a mix of Koreans and other foreigners like him. At first, some people were a little shy, but Bart's friendly nature quickly broke down any barriers. He would share his snacks, help others on difficult parts of the trail, and always have a cheerful word for everyone. He learned the names of the mountains they climbed and the flowers they saw along the way. He connected with people easily because he was genuinely interested in them. He did not pretend, he simply cared. This was a rare quality, and people were drawn to it like moths to a gentle flame. One of the people Bart met in the hiking club was a man named Dr. Choi Min-jun. Dr. Choi was a surgeon at a local hospital. He was respected in his field, but was known to be a very quiet and serious man. He rarely spoke to others in the group. Bart, however, made a special effort. He would walk beside Dr. Choi and ask him about his work. He would talk about birds or the weather, simple things that required no deep conversation. Slowly, Dr. Choi began to open up. He started to share small details about his long hours at the hospital and the stress of his job. Bart listened patiently, offering no advice, only understanding. A quiet friendship began to form between the two men. Bart also became a regular at a small coffee shop near his apartment. He would sit there in the afternoons, preparing his lessons. He got to know the owner, a young woman named Sora. He learned that she dreamed of traveling to Europe one day. He brought her books and postcards from places he had been. He encouraged her to practice her English with him. Soon the coffee shop became a gathering spot for Bart's friends. Students, fellow teachers, and members of the hiking club would drop by, knowing they would find a friendly face and a good conversation. Bart was the center of this small, happy community. He built it not with effort, but with simple, everyday kindness. Changwon was a city that moved at a pleasant pace, and Bart embraced it completely. He bought a second-hand bicycle and used it to get everywhere. The city had wide, safe bike lanes that crisscrossed through parks and along streams. Every morning, Bart would cycle to the university, enjoying the fresh air. He would greet the security guards at the gate with a cheerful "Annyeonghaseyo," and they would smile and wave back. His bicycle was not just for commuting, it was his way of seeing the city up close. He discovered hidden alleys with wonderful restaurants and small shops that sold handmade crafts. He felt like a true resident, not a temporary visitor. Life was simple and good. His daily routine was comforting. After his classes, he would cycle to his favorite coffee shop for an hour of lesson planning. Then, he would often visit the local market. He loved the vibrant energy of the market, with its colorful displays of fresh vegetables, fish, and spices. The vendors got to know him. They would teach him the Korean names for different foods and give him extra kimchi with his purchase. He would practice his new Korean words with them, and they would laugh good-naturedly at his mistakes. He was the friendly American professor who always had time for a chat. These small interactions were the best part of his day. They made him feel connected to the heart of the city. On weekends, when he was not hiking, Bart explored further. He took buses to nearby towns like Jinhae, famous for its cherry blossom festival. He visited historic temples and quiet beaches along the coast. He always brought his camera and took beautiful photos, not just of the scenery, but of the people. He had a talent for capturing moments of everyday life. An old woman selling vegetables, children playing in a park, a couple walking hand in hand. He created a blog where he shared his photos and wrote about his experiences. His posts were filled with affection for his new home. He wanted to show the world the gentle beauty of life in this part of Korea. His apartment became a reflection of his life in Changwon. The walls were decorated with his photographs. The shelves were filled with Korean pottery he had bought at the market. He learned to cook a few simple Korean dishes and would sometimes invite his friends over for dinner. His small home was always filled with warmth and good smells. It was a place of peace and friendship. Bart had built a full and happy life for himself. He was respected at work, loved by his friends, and was a welcome part of his community. He had found everything he was looking for when he first stepped off that train, full of hope. He was truly content. In every bright picture, there can be a small shadow. In Bart's world of sunshine and friendship, that shadow was subtle, almost invisible at first. It came from a place he did not expect. Dr. Choi, the quiet surgeon from the hiking club, had become a regular part of Bart's circle. He would join the group at the coffee shop after his long shifts at the hospital. He would sit and listen to the lively conversations, a small, rare smile sometimes appearing on his face. Everyone saw it as a positive change. They thought Bart's friendship was helping the serious doctor to relax and open up. They were happy for him. But sometimes when Bart was telling a funny story and everyone was laughing, a different expression would cross Dr. Choi's face. It was there for only a second, a flicker in his eyes before it was gone. It was a look of something cold and distant. It was a strange mix of admiration and something else, something harder to name. It was as if he was looking at Bart from behind a thick wall of glass. He saw the warmth and the light, but he could not feel it himself. He saw how easily Bart connected with people, how they loved him without effort. And in those quiet moments, the shadow of envy began to grow in his heart. Dr. Choi was a man who had achieved everything through hard work and discipline. His life was a series of difficult exams, long hours of study, and intense competition. He was respected for his skills as a surgeon, but he was not loved. People admired his mind and his steady hands, but they did not seek his company. He had never learned the simple art of making a friend. He watched Bart, who seemed to do it so naturally. Bart did not have a prestigious job like a surgeon. He was just a teacher. Yet, he had what Dr. Choi secretly wanted more than anything: easy, genuine affection from others. This feeling grew slowly, like a poison. Dr. Choi started to make small critical comments. If Bart shared a new photograph, Dr. Choi might say, "The focus is a little soft." If Bart told a story about a successful class, Dr. Choi might mention how university standards were not what they used to be. The comments were always quiet and subtle, said with a neutral expression. The others in the group barely noticed them. They thought it was just Dr. Choi's serious personality. But Bart noticed. It was a small, cold breeze in a warm room. He did not understand it, and because he was a kind man, he dismissed it. He told himself he was imagining things. As the months went by, Bart's popularity just kept growing, and honestly, so did the unseen currents of Dr. Choi's resentment. Bart got invited to give a special lecture at a local community center about American culture and, well, the event was a huge success. The room was packed and people asked so many questions. Folks were just charmed by his gentle humor and his deep respect for Korean culture. Afterwards, a small group of friends, including Dr. Choi, went out for dinner to celebrate. Everyone congratulated Bart and told him how wonderful his lecture was. They were all so proud of him. Bart was happy, but he was also humble. He thanked everyone for their support. Dr. Choi sat at the end of the table, mostly silent. He watched Bart. He saw the way Sora from the coffee shop looked at him with admiration. He saw how Bart's university colleagues treated him as an equal, even though he was a foreigner. He heard the genuine warmth in their voices. For Dr. Choi, every word of praise for Bart was like a small stone being dropped into his own empty heart. He had spent his life seeking respect and admiration through his difficult profession. He saved lives. Yet here was this simple teacher, stealing the spotlight with his easy charm and his simple stories. It felt deeply unfair. The envy began to affect Dr. Choi's work. He became more irritable with the nurses at the hospital. He was sharper in his comments to junior doctors. His colleagues noticed the change. They thought he was just overworked, that the stress of being a surgeon was getting to him. No one could imagine the real reason. No one could see the envy that was consuming him. On the outside, he was still Dr. Choi, the brilliant, controlled surgeon. But on the inside, a storm was raging. He started to avoid the gatherings at the coffee shop. He told people he was too busy with work. In truth, he could no longer stand to be in Bart's presence. One afternoon, Dr. Choi saw Bart cycling through a park. Bart was laughing as he tried to keep up with some of his students who were also on their bikes. He looked so happy, so carefree. Dr. Choi was standing by his own expensive car on his way home from a stressful surgery. The contrast was sharp and painful. Bart's life seemed so easy, so full of light and joy. Dr. Choi's life felt like a long dark tunnel of responsibility and loneliness. In that moment, his envy turned into something much darker. It became a cold, hard knot of resentment in his chest. He felt that Bart had somehow taken something from him, something he never even had. The news spread through Changwon like a cold winter wind. It was a grey Tuesday morning. Bart Richards had been found in his apartment. He had been murdered. The city was in shock. How could this happen here, in this peaceful, safe community? And how could it happen to him? Bart was the kindest, most gentle person anyone knew. He had no enemies. The idea was impossible. His students cried openly on the university campus. His colleagues walked around in a daze, unable to believe the terrible news. The hiking club cancelled their weekly trip. The small coffee shop near his apartment closed its doors for the day. A dark cloud of grief and disbelief hung over the city. The community that Bart had so carefully built was now a community in mourning. People gathered in small groups, talking in hushed, sad voices. They shared stories about him. They remembered his smile, his silly jokes, his patient way of listening. Each memory was a small treasure, but now it was also a source of great pain. The question on everyone's mind was the same. Who would do such a thing? And why? It made no sense. Violence was something that happened in other places, in movies and on the news. It was not supposed to touch their lives, and it was certainly not supposed to touch someone as good as Bart. The police arrived at Bart's apartment building. They put up yellow tape, and the quiet street was suddenly filled with an official, somber energy. Neighbors watched from their windows, their faces pale with shock. They had all known Bart. He was the friendly foreigner who always said hello. He was the man who brought life and warmth to their building. Now, his light was gone. The world felt a little darker, a little colder. The sense of safety that they had always taken for granted was shattered. Fear, an unfamiliar feeling in their quiet neighborhood, began to creep in. Among the grieving friends, Dr. Choi was there too. He stood with the others outside the coffee shop, his face a mask of sorrow. He offered quiet words of comfort to Sora, who was crying uncontrollably. He looked just as shocked and devastated as everyone else. No one would have guessed the turmoil inside him. No one could see that his grief was not for Bart, but for the terrible thing that had been done. The community was united in its loss, but hidden within it was the very source of that loss. A terrible secret was hiding in plain sight, wrapped in a surgeon's coat and a sad expression. Inspector Kim Jae-wook was assigned to the case. He was a man in his late 40s with kind eyes and a thoughtful face. He was not a detective who rushed or shouted. He was a listener and an observer. He understood that a murder was not just a puzzle of clues. It was a story of broken relationships and human pain. His first task was to understand the victim. He went to the university and spoke to Bart's colleagues and students. He visited the coffee shop and spoke to Sora. He listened patiently as people shared their memories of Bart. He did not ask many questions at first. He just let them talk. Inspector Kim built a picture of Bart Richards in his mind. This was a man who was deeply loved. He was a community builder, a person who brought people together. The inspector knew that in cases like this, the motive was often personal. It was rarely about money or a random act of violence. It was usually about emotions, love, jealousy, anger, or fear. He knew that the answer to this mystery was not in a fingerprint or a footprint alone. The answer was hidden in the relationships that Bart had built. He had to look carefully at the circle of friends, the very people who were now mourning him so deeply. He went to Bart's apartment himself after the forensics team was finished. It was a clean, orderly place. Inspector Kim walked through the small rooms. He looked at the photographs on the wall, the books on the shelf, and the half-finished lesson plans on the desk. He tried to feel the life that was lived here. He noticed a small, beautifully carved wooden bird on a table. It was a gift, he guessed. He saw a small collection of Korean pottery. This was the man who appreciated the culture of his new home. The inspector felt a sense of sadness. He had a duty to find justice for this good man who had come to Korea with so much hope. Inspector Kim sat down with his team. The victim was loved by everyone, he said, his voice calm. This means one of two things. Either the killer was a complete stranger, which is rare in a case like this, or the killer was someone close to him, someone who pretended to be a friend. He instructed his officers to conduct detailed interviews with every person in Bart's close circle. He wanted to know their alibis for the night of the murder, but more than that, he wanted to understand the dynamics of the group. He was looking for any sign of tension, any hidden resentment, any small crack in the perfect picture of friendship. The investigation had truly begun. The interviews began and Inspector Kim listened to each story carefully. Everyone was cooperative. They were all eager to help find the person who had hurt their friend. They all expressed their shock and sadness. On the surface, everything seemed normal. All the friends had alibis. Sora was working late at her coffee shop. Bart's colleagues were at home with their families. The members of the hiking club were at their own homes. Dr. Choi Min-jun said he was on call at the hospital, though he did not have any emergency surgeries that night. All the stories were clean and simple. Too clean, Inspector Kim thought. He started to look for small inconsistencies. He was a man who believed that truth was in the details. He asked Sora about the last time she saw Bart. She said he left the coffee shop around 7 p.m., happy and cheerful as always. He asked Bart's next-door neighbor if they heard anything. The neighbor, an elderly woman, said she heard a brief, loud argument around 9 p.m., but she said the walls were thin and she did not think much of it. This was the first small crack. The killer was likely someone Bart knew, someone he would let into his apartment. The argument suggested a personal conflict. Inspector Kim decided to speak with Dr. Choi again. The surgeon's alibi was that he was at the hospital. This was easy to check. The hospital records confirmed he was there until 8:30 p.m. The murder likely happened after that. Dr. Choi lived only 10 minutes away from Bart's apartment. He had time. The inspector asked Dr. Choi about his friendship with Bart. He was a very good man, Dr. Choi said, his voice flat. He was a good friend to all of us. He helped me to be more social. The words were right, but the inspector sensed a lack of genuine emotion. It felt like a speech that had been practiced. The key came from a small, seemingly unimportant detail. Inspector Kim was looking through the evidence from Bart's apartment one more time. He saw the report on the murder weapon. It was a scalpel, a surgeon's knife. It was an unusual weapon, very sharp and precise. It had been left at the scene. The forensics team had found no fingerprints on it. But Inspector Kim remembered something from his first interview with one of the nurses at Dr. Choi's hospital. She had mentioned how Dr. Choi was very particular about his surgical tools. She said he had recently been upset because a scalpel from his personal kit had gone missing. The pieces of the puzzle started to click into place. Inspector Kim requested a final interview with Dr. Choi. He met him not in an interview room, but in a quiet park, not far from where Dr. Choi had seen Bart laughing on his bicycle. The inspector did not start with an accusation. He spoke about pressure and loneliness. He spoke about the difficulty of living a life where everyone expects you to be perfect. He spoke about envy, how it can grow in the dark and poison a person's soul. Dr. Choi listened, his face pale and still. He did not say a word. He just stared at the ground, his hands clenched into tight fists. Bart Richards was a kind man, Inspector Kim said softly. His kindness was like a bright light, but sometimes a bright light can make others feel like they are living in a shadow. At that moment, Dr. Choi looked up and his eyes were filled with a terrible pain. The mask of control finally broke. He had everything, Dr. Choi whispered, his voice trembling. It came so easily to him. Friendship, happiness, love. I have worked my whole life. I saved people's lives. But I am alone. He did nothing, and they all loved him. It wasn't fair. He confessed everything. He had gone to Bart's apartment to confront him, to tell him to stay away from his friends. An argument started. The envy and rage that he had kept hidden for so long exploded. The arrest of Dr. Choi sent a new wave of shock through the community. It was almost harder to believe than the murder itself. How could a friend do this? How could a respected surgeon be capable of such a terrible act? It was a difficult truth to accept. The motive of envy was so simple, yet so profound. It showed a darkness that no one had seen. There was sadness for Bart, but now there was also a complex sadness for Dr. Choi, a man whose loneliness had turned into a destructive force. The friends had to face the painful reality that they had not really known him at all. In the weeks that followed, the city of Changwon began to heal. The community that Bart had built came together, stronger than before. They supported each other in their grief. They held a memorial service for him in the park where he loved to walk. They shared stories, they cried, and they laughed remembering his warmth. They realized that the best way to honor Bart was to live as he did, with kindness, with openness, and with a genuine love for the people around them. The Scalpel had brought scorn and sorrow, but the memory of Bart Richards brought a lasting lesson. His light was extinguished, but the warmth he shared remained in the hearts of the many people he had touched.